Hello everyone, and welcome to Curious Echoes. Today we are going to talk about one of the most famous and controversial scientists of all time, Charles Darwin. You probably know him as the father of evolution, the man who proposed that all living things share a common ancestor and that they change over time through natural selection. But did you also know that he made some big mistakes in his theory? In this video, we will explore 3 things that Darwin got wrong about evolution and how modern science has corrected them. Let's get started. The first thing that Darwin got wrong was the Earth's age. When Darwin published his book on the origin of species in 1859, he had no idea how old the Earth really was. He based his calculations on the assumption that the Earth was cooling down from a molten state, and he estimated that it was about 100 million years old. He also relied on his son George, an astronomer, who came up with a similar figure using the orbital dynamics of the solar system. However, both of them were way off the mark. The Earth is actually much older than 100 million years. It is about 4.5 billion years old. How do we know that? Well, thanks to the discovery of radioactivity and radiometric dating, we can measure the age of rocks and fossils by analyzing the decay of certain elements in them. For example, carbon decays into nitrogen at a known rate. So by measuring how much carbon is left in a sample, we can estimate how old it is. Radiometric dating has shown us that the Earth formed about 4.5 billion years ago, and that life appeared about 3.5 billion years ago. This means that Darwin's estimate was off by a factor of 45. That's a huge difference. Why does it matter? Well, because it affects how we understand the pace and scope of evolution. Darwin thought that evolution was a slow and gradual process that required a lot of time to produce complex and diverse forms of life. But if the Earth is much older than he thought, then evolution could have been faster and more dramatic than he imagined. The second thing that Darwin got wrong was variations in natural selection. Darwin knew that natural selection was the mechanism that drove evolution, but he didn't know how it worked exactly. He didn't know what caused the variations among individuals in a population and how they were inherited by their offspring. He came up with a hypothesis called Pangenesis, which was basically a mix of ancient ideas and his own observations. According to Pangenesis, every part of an organism produces tiny particles called gemmules, which are then collected in the reproductive cells. When 2 organisms mate, their gemmules mix together in the fertilized egg and then distribute themselves throughout the body of the offspring. This way, the offspring inherits traits from both parents and also from their own experiences. For example, Darwin thought that if a giraffe stretched its neck to reach high leaves, its gemmules would be affected by this effort, and then passed on to its offspring, who would have longer necks as a result. He also thought that if an organ or a limb was not used, it would produce fewer gemmules and eventually disappear in future generations. However, Pangenesis was completely wrong. There are no such things as gemmules, and traits are not acquired or lost by use or disuse. Traits are determined by genes, which are segments of DNA that code for proteins. Genes are located on chromosomes, which are long strands of DNA that are found in the nucleus of every cell. Every organism has 2 sets of chromosomes, one inherited from each parent. When organisms reproduce sexually, their chromosomes undergo a process called meiosis, which produces gametes, sperm cells or egg cells. Gametes have only 1 set of chromosomes each, half from each parent. When 2 gametes fuse together during fertilization, they form a zygote, a cell with 2 sets of chromosomes, 1 from each parent. The zygote then divides by mitosis, a process that produces identical copies of cells with 2 sets of chromosomes each. This way, every cell in the body of an organism has the same genetic information as the zygote. However, not every gene is expressed in every cell or at every stage of development. Some genes are turned on or off by various factors, such as hormones or environmental cues. This is called gene regulation, and it allows for different types of cells to perform different functions in different parts of the body. Also, not every gene is identical in every individual or population. Some genes have different versions or variants called alleles. Alleles can arise by mutations, changes in the DNA sequence caused by errors during replication or by external agents such as radiation or chemicals. Some alleles may confer an advantage or a disadvantage to an organism in a given environment, while others may have no effect at all. Natural selection acts on these variations, favoring the alleles that increase the chances of survival and reproduction, and eliminating the alleles that decrease them. This way, natural selection shapes the gene pool of a population over time, leading to adaptation and speciation. The third and final thing that Darwin got wrong was Lamarck's theory of acquired traits. Darwin was not the first to propose a theory of evolution. Before him, there was a French naturalist named Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, who published his own theory in 1801. Lamarck's theory was based on two principles: use and disuse, and inheritance of acquired characteristics. According to Lamarck, organisms change their traits according to their needs and habits. For example, he thought that birds that ate insects developed long and slender beaks, while birds that ate seeds developed short and thick beaks. He also thought that these changes were passed on to their offspring, who inherited the modified traits. Lamarck believed that evolution was a progressive and predetermined process that aimed at increasing the complexity and perfection of life forms. He thought that all organisms had an innate drive to become more advanced and adapted to their environment. Darwin was influenced by Lamarck's theory, and he incorporated some of his ideas into his own hypothesis of Pangenesis. He also acknowledged that some traits could be acquired or modified by the environment, and then inherited by the offspring. He gave some examples of this phenomenon, such as the effects of climate, food, or domestication on animals and plants. However, Lamarck's theory was also wrong. Traits are not acquired or modified by use or disuse, or by the environment. Traits are determined by genes, which are not affected by the external world. The only way to change genes is by mutations, which are random and unpredictable. Also, traits are not inherited by the offspring unless they are present in the gametes. The gametes are produced by meiosis, which separates the chromosomes into two sets, one for each gamete. The chromosomes in the gametes do not contain any information from the other cells or organs of the body. Therefore, any changes that occur in the body during an organism's lifetime are not passed on to its offspring. The only exception to this rule is epigenetics, the study of how gene expression can be altered by environmental factors without changing the DNA sequence. Epigenetic changes can affect how genes are turned on or off by adding or removing chemical groups to the DNA or to the proteins that wrap around it. These changes can be influenced by factors such as stress, diet, or exposure to toxins. Some epigenetic changes can be inherited by the offspring through the gametes, but they are not permanent or fixed. They can be reversed or modified by other factors in later generations. Therefore, epigenetics does not contradict the basic principles of genetics and natural selection. So, these are the three things that Darwin got wrong about evolution: the Earth's age, variations in natural selection, and Lamarck's theory of acquired traits. Even though he was a genius who changed our understanding of life, he was also a human who made some errors and assumptions. What do you think of Darwin's mistakes? Do you know any other examples of scientific blunders? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel for more fascinating videos about science and history. Thanks for watching.